At 3:47 this morning, I found cocaine in my suitcase. My name is Robert, and someone I trusted with my life had just tried to send me to federal prison. The worst part? He was standing right there, pretending to help me pack for my flight to Amsterdam, asking if I needed anything else for my big trip. My son-in-law Marcus thought he was clever. Plant drugs in the old man's luggage, watch him get arrested at airport security, comfort the grieving daughter while she inherits $2.3 million early. Clean, simple, foolproof. But Marcus made one critical mistake. He assumed that 40 years designing aircraft means you don't know how to think strategically under pressure. I had 4 hours until departure. 4 hours to turn his perfect plan into his worst nightmare. You know what they say about assumptions. And if you stick around, I think you'll enjoy seeing exactly how this one destroyed him. Hit that subscribe button. You're going to want to see where this goes. Marcus had been setting this up for months. Ever since Helen died, he'd been positioning me as the confused old widower who couldn't handle modern life. Dad's been repeating stories, he'd tell Amy. Yesterday he asked me 3 times about the mortgage rate. That was a lie. I asked once. He ignored me twice. Maybe we should handle the estate planning, he'd suggest during family dinners. All those complicated investment accounts, too much stress for someone your age. Amy would nod sympathetically. Marcus is probably right, Dad. You shouldn't have to worry about money stuff right now. Money stuff. Like I hadn't managed Boeing pension funds worth millions. Last month, Marcus escalated. Robert, I found these articles about early dementia symptoms, memory issues, confusion about finances. Maybe you should see a doctor. He'd researched it, printed articles, highlighted symptoms that supposedly matched my behavior. Amy started watching me differently. Concerned glances when I forgot someone's name. Worried phone calls checking if I'd taken my medication. Dad, Marcus thinks you might benefit from someone helping with your bills. Just temporarily. That's when I realized he wasn't just stealing my money. He was stealing my daughter's trust. The cocaine was just the final move. 3 weeks ago, Marcus started asking specific questions about my Amsterdam trip. What time's your flight? Which airline? Are you checking bags? I thought he was being helpful. Now I understood he was gathering intelligence. You know, Robert, international travel can be tricky. Security's really tight. Maybe I should help you pack. Yesterday evening he insisted on organizing my luggage. Spent 20 minutes in my bedroom, supposedly making sure everything was folded properly. I should have known something was wrong. Marcus considers loading the dishwasher a major accomplishment. But grief makes you grateful for small kindnesses, even from people who don't usually offer them. While Marcus was upstairs helping, I noticed him making multiple trips to his car. Getting packing supplies, he explained. Want to make sure nothing gets damaged. What he was actually doing was retrieving a small package from his hiding spot in the spare tire compartment. I know because I checked his car this morning after finding the drugs. Empty hiding spot, fresh tire tracks in my driveway gravel. Marcus had been planning this meticulously. He'd researched federal drug trafficking penalties online. I found the search history on the family computer. Minimum sentence cocaine possession. How long federal drug trials take. Asset forfeiture inheritance. He knew exactly what would happen to me. 10 years minimum. At 67, that's a death sentence. He'd also researched how quickly wives inherit when husbands die in federal prison. Spoiler alert, it's fast. But Marcus made one crucial error in his research. He focused on what would happen to me, not what I was capable of doing to him. 40 years in aerospace defense contracts teaches you things civilian criminals don't understand, like how to stay calm under pressure. How to think systematically when someone's trying to sabotage your mission. How to redirect an attack back to its source. At 3:47 this morning, holding that bag of cocaine, I realized something important. Marcus wasn't just stealing my money. He was stealing my dignity, my daughter's respect, my late wife's memory, and potentially my life. He'd calculated everything except one variable. What happens when you try to destroy someone who spent 4 decades keeping million-dollar aircraft from falling out of the sky? Time to show him what real strategic thinking looks like. Standing in my bedroom at 3:50 a.m., holding enough cocaine to destroy everything I'd built, the full scope of Marcus's plan became crystal clear. If TSA found these drugs in my luggage, my life was over. Federal trafficking charges carry a 10-year mandatory minimum. At 67, I'd die in prison. But the devastation would ripple far beyond me. Helen and I had spent 40 years building a $2.3 million estate. Every investment decision, every sacrifice, every late night working overtime, all to ensure Amy's future security. Federal asset forfeiture laws would freeze everything. The house Helen loved, the Boeing pension, Amy's inheritance, the trust funds we'd established for future grandchildren, all gone while I rotted in federal prison. Amy would be forced to choose between supporting her father through a drug trial or protecting her own family's reputation. I knew my daughter. She'd stand by me even if it destroyed her marriage, her career, her children's futures. The legal bills alone would bankrupt us. Federal defense attorneys charge $800 per hour. A trafficking trial could cost $500,000 even if I were eventually acquitted. But there was something worse than the financial implications. Amy would blame herself forever. She'd convince me to trust Marcus, to accept his help, to let him into our family financial planning. That guilt would eat her alive. Helen's memory would be destroyed. Instead of being remembered as a devoted wife whose husband honored her legacy, she'd be the woman whose widower died in federal prison because of her son-in-law's greed. Every family gathering, every holiday, every milestone would be shadowed by the knowledge that Grandpa died a convicted felon. Marcus had calculated this perfectly. With me in prison, he'd have complete control over Amy's inheritance decisions. No more outdated investment advice from the old man. No more conservative wealth preservation strategies blocking his access to easy money. His trading account showed $47,000 in losses this year alone. His gambling debts were probably worse. And now I understood where he planned to get recovery funds. Amy had no idea about any of this. In her mind, Marcus was the concerned son-in-law, helping his aging father-in-law through a difficult time. "Dad's been so confused lately," she'd told her sister last week. I overheard the phone call. Marcus thinks he might need professional help. Professional help. Like assisted living, where confused old men with dementia symptoms couldn't interfere with their daughter's financial decisions. The setup was brilliant and horrible. Frame me for drug trafficking, comfort Amy through the legal nightmare, gradually assume control of family finances while I was either in prison or too mentally compromised to object. But Marcus had made one critical miscalculation. He thought aerospace engineers were just technical people who understood machines, but not people. He assumed 40 years of defense clearances meant I was rule-following and naive about real-world crime. He was wrong on both counts. Defense contractors don't survive 4 decades without learning to recognize threats, assess vulnerabilities, and neutralize sabotage attempts. We also don't maintain federal security clearances without understanding how law enforcement actually works. I pulled out my phone and checked the time. 4 hours until departure. 4 hours to save my family's future and show Marcus what happens when you underestimate someone who spent 40 years preventing catastrophic failures. The drugs in my hand weren't just evidence of his crime. They were his vulnerability. Time to turn Marcus's perfect plan into his complete destruction. I needed more than just the drugs. I needed Marcus's confession, recorded clearly enough for law enforcement and detailed enough to prove premeditation. At 3:52 a.m., I opened my iPhone's voice memos app and started recording. Then I slipped the phone into my shirt pocket, microphone facing out. Now for the distraction technique. I walked to Marcus's room and flipped on the overhead light. "Marcus, wake up! Emergency!" He bolted upright, squinting. "Robert? What's wrong?" "Amy's in the hospital. Car accident. We need to go now." Marcus was instantly alert, reaching for his clothes. "Is she okay? How bad?" "Perfect." While he was panicked and disoriented, I walked to his dresser and knocked over his water glass. "Sorry, I'm shaking. Help me clean this up." As Marcus bent down with a towel, I quickly transferred the cocaine package from my pocket to his jacket hanging on the chair. The whole switch took 3 seconds. "Actually," I said, "false alarm. Amy just texted. She's fine." Fender bender, not serious. Marcus stopped mopping water and stared at me. "What?" "She's okay. Insurance will handle it. Go back to sleep." "Robert, you just said she was in the hospital." "Did I? Sorry, I'm confused. Worried about tomorrow's flight." I watched Marcus's expression change. This was the opening he'd been waiting for, evidence of my supposed mental decline. "Robert, sit down. You're clearly upset about something." I remained standing. "I found something in my luggage tonight, something that doesn't belong to me." "What kind of something?" I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo I'd taken of the empty Ziploc bag where the drugs had been hidden. "Someone put drugs in my suitcase." Marcus's acting was impressive. Shock, concern, protective anger. Jesus Christ. "How much?" "About 3 grams of white powder. Cocaine, I think." That's federal trafficking quantities. Robert, this is serious. Where are the drugs now? I flushed them down the toilet. Marcus's face went white. You what? I panicked. Flushed them. Was that wrong? Robert, that was evidence. We needed that for the police report. His distress seemed genuine, but I knew better. Marcus wasn't upset about lost evidence. He was terrified because his plan had literally gone down the drain. Should we call the police anyway? I asked innocently. Maybe. But without the actual drugs, it's just your word, and given your recent memory issues. What memory issues? Robert, you just told me Amy was in the hospital, then said it was a fender bender, then said you were confused. These are exactly the kinds of symptoms Amy and I have been worried about. There it was, the trap he'd been setting for months. So you think I imagined finding drugs in my luggage? I think you found something, got confused about what it was, and panicked. Maybe it was medication that fell out of a bottle. Maybe it was baking soda from something Amy left there. 3 grams of baking soda doesn't get you 10 years in federal prison, Marcus. 10 years? His surprise seemed genuine. Robert, possession charges aren't that severe unless you're talking about trafficking quantities. Interesting. Marcus knew federal sentencing guidelines. How do you know so much about drug penalties? I don't. I'm just saying maybe you're catastrophizing because you're stressed about traveling alone. Stressed about traveling alone, or stressed about someone planting evidence in my luggage? Marcus's demeanor shifted. Who would plant evidence in your luggage? Someone with access to my bedroom, someone who knew my travel plans, someone who benefits if I'm in federal prison. That's paranoid thinking, Robert. Is it? Let's think this through logically. Who inherits if I die in prison? Amy inherits when you die naturally. That could be 20 years from now. Or it could be 2 years from now if I'm serving a federal sentence. Marcus stood up, pacing. You're talking conspiracy theories now. Answer the question. Who benefits financially if I'm convicted of drug trafficking? Nobody benefits from that. Wrong answer. Amy inherits immediately. No waiting for natural death. No years of conservative investment advice. Just instant access to $2.3 million. You think Amy would set you up? I think Amy would never hurt me, but I think someone who controls Amy's decisions might. Marcus stopped pacing. What's that supposed to mean? It means someone's been coaching Amy to see dementia symptoms. Someone's been researching federal drug penalties. Someone's been asking detailed questions about my travel plans. Robert, you're scaring me. This paranoid thinking. Show me your phone. What? Your phone. Show me your search history from the last month. Marcus's face hardened. That's private. So is planting cocaine in someone's luggage. I didn't plant anything. Then showing me your search history shouldn't be a problem. I'm not showing you my phone based on your paranoid fantasies. I pulled my phone from my pocket and stopped the recording. 23 minutes of Marcus talking about federal penalties, inheritance timing, and refusing to provide his search history. Interesting choice of words, Marcus. Fantasies. I didn't mean... You seem to know a lot about federal drug laws for someone who's innocent. Marcus stared at my phone. Did you just record our conversation? Every word. Marcus lunged for my phone, but 4 decades of staying calm under pressure has its advantages. I stepped back smoothly. Delete that recording. No. Robert, you recorded me without consent. That's illegal. Actually, Arizona is a one-party consent state. I can record any conversation I'm part of. I smiled. Funny how you immediately knew I was recording, though. Almost like you were worried about something specific being documented. Marcus ran his hands through his hair. This is insane. You're having some kind of breakdown. Maybe. Or maybe I'm finally thinking clearly for the first time in months. I scrolled through my contacts, stopping at a name that made Marcus nervous. Detective Sarah Chen, Phoenix PD Financial Crimes Unit. Who's that? Someone I know from my Boeing days. We worked together on corporate security issues. That wasn't entirely true. We'd met at one security conference 2 years ago, but Marcus didn't need to know the details. You can't call the police based on paranoid suspicions. Watch me. But instead of calling Chen, I scrolled to another contact. James Rodriguez, TSA Federal Security Director. We'd actually never worked together, but his name was in my phone from a LinkedIn connection. What are you doing? Making sure the right people know about tonight's conversation before my flight. Robert, please, think about what you're doing. You call the police with conspiracy theories, they're going to see an elderly man with obvious cognitive issues making wild accusations against his concerned son-in-law. Marcus was probably right about that. but he didn't understand the full picture. I pulled out my wallet and showed him something he'd never seen before. My Boeing retiree identification card with DHS cleared stamped across the bottom. You know what this is, Marcus? Retirement card? Federal security clearance, still active. Aerospace defense contractors don't just lose their clearances when they retire, especially not ones who worked satellite guidance systems. That was stretching the truth, but the ID looked official enough. When someone with active federal clearance reports potential narcotics trafficking, it triggers automatic reviews, not local police reviews, federal reviews. Marcus's confidence was starting to crack. You're bluffing. Am I? Let me ask you something. How much do you actually know about my background? You designed airplane parts. I designed guidance systems for military satellites for 40 years. You think that work just involved technical drawings? I scrolled through my contacts again, stopping at Colonel Patricia Williams, Pentagon Procurement, another LinkedIn connection I'd never actually spoken to. See, the thing about aerospace defense work, Marcus, is it creates relationships. People in federal law enforcement, people in airport security, people who take threats against cleared personnel very seriously. You're trying to intimidate me. I'm explaining consequences. You wanted to play strategic games with someone you thought was powerless, but you never researched your target's actual capabilities. That much was true. Marcus had assumed I was just a confused old man with money. He'd never looked into my professional background. What capabilities? I held up my phone. Well, for starters, I know how to document evidence properly. This recording is already backed up to cloud storage. Even if you destroy my phone, the conversation still exists. That's just technology. True. But here's what isn't just technology. I pulled up my photos and showed him a picture I'd taken of his car's spare tire compartment. I also know how to conduct basic surveillance. Marcus went pale. When did you? This morning, after I found the drugs. Empty hiding spot in your spare tire. Fresh tracks in my gravel driveway. You really should have cleaned up better. That doesn't prove anything. By itself, no. But combined with your search history, your detailed knowledge of federal penalties, and this recorded confession, it paints a pretty clear picture. Marcus sat down heavily. What search history? The family computer, Marcus, federal drug trafficking penalties, asset forfeiture inheritance laws. How long do federal trials take? Did you really think I wouldn't check? Actually, I hadn't checked yet, but Marcus's expression confirmed my guess was correct. You've been planning this for months, haven't you? Marcus said nothing. The question now is whether you want to confess voluntarily, or whether you prefer to be surprised when TSA finds drugs in your luggage. What are you talking about? I checked my watch. 5:37 a.m., 2 hours and 48 minutes until departure. Simple physics, Marcus. Objects in motion tend to stay in motion. You put cocaine in motion tonight, but you forgot to account for trajectory changes. I have no idea what you mean. You will. Because in 3 hours, airport security is going to teach you an important lesson about unintended consequences. At Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport, Marcus was practically vibrating with nervous energy. He'd barely spoken during the 40-minute drive, constantly checking his phone and glancing at my carry-on bag. Amy rode shotgun, oblivious to the tension. I still wish you weren't traveling alone, Dad. International flights are so complicated now. I'll be fine, sweetheart. Marcus offered to come with you, she continued. Didn't you, honey? Marcus forced a smile. Of course, family should stick together. That's thoughtful, I replied, watching his reflection in the rearview mirror. But unnecessary. Inside Terminal 4, we approached the Delta check-in counter. Marcus stayed close, probably expecting me to check the bag where he'd originally planted the drugs. When I walked past baggage check-in toward security with only my carry-on, his confusion was obvious. Dad, aren't you checking that bag? Amy asked. It looks heavy. Everything fits in carry-on. Marcus stepped closer. Robert, at your age, carrying that through the airport, maybe you should check it. Avoid the hassle. His insistence was almost comical. I'm fine, Marcus. But security screening with larger bags takes longer. More complicated. I have TSA pre-check. It'll be quick. Marcus's jaw tightened. He was realizing his plan had a flaw. He needed me to check the bag to avoid being present when drugs were discovered. At the security checkpoint, Amy hugged me goodbye. Call when you land, okay? Of course. Marcus hung back, scrolling through his phone with theatrical casualness. But I noticed he'd positioned himself with a perfect view of the screening area, phone camera discreetly aimed at the security checkpoint. Have a safe flight, Robert, he called out loudly. Hope security doesn't give you any trouble with that heavy bag. Several passengers turned to look. Marcus was creating an audience for my supposed downfall. I'm sure it'll be fine. The TSA pre-check line moved quickly. I reached Agent Rodriguez, no relation to my contact, who scanned my ID and boarding pass. Purpose of travel today, sir? Visiting family in Amsterdam. Any electronics or liquids in your carry-on? Laptop and standard toiletries. Have a good flight. I moved toward the metal detector, hyper-aware of Marcus watching from the main security area. His phone was definitely recording now, but as I placed my carry-on on the X-ray belt, something unexpected happened. Sir, could you step aside, please? TSA Agent Williams gestured toward a secondary screening station. My heart rate spiked. This wasn't part of my plan. Is there a problem? Just routine. Sometimes the scanner picks up unusual density patterns. Behind me, I could practically feel Marcus's excitement. 50 passengers in line, all turning to watch the elderly man getting additional screening. Agent Williams opened my bag methodically. Laptop, charger, toiletries, 3 days of clothes. Sir, everything looks normal here. She started to close the bag. Wait, this was wrong. Where were the drugs? Then I realized my mistake. In my 4 a.m. panic about switching the packages, I'd moved the drugs to Marcus's jacket pocket, but Marcus wasn't flying anywhere. He wasn't going through security. My brilliant plan had a fatal flaw. Agent Williams rezipped my bag. You're all set, sir. Gate B23. Thank you. I collected my belongings, mind racing. Marcus was still watching from the main area, now confused about why I hadn't been arrested. As I walked toward my gate, my phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. Everything okay? Looked like security was giving you trouble. I typed back. All fine. Routine check. His response came immediately. Good. Weird that they flagged an innocent old man's bag, though. Almost like they were looking for something specific. He was fishing, trying to understand why his plan had failed. Another text. Maybe someone called in a tip? Anonymous report about suspicious passenger behavior? That was interesting. Marcus was suggesting he might have called TSA himself to ensure my bag got searched. I reached gate B23 and sat down, watching other passengers. A businessman with an expensive camera was shooting video of the departure board. A young woman live-streamed her travel experience. Everyone had phones out, creating content. Then inspiration hit. I opened TikTok and started recording a video selfie. Flying to Amsterdam today. Interesting morning at security. Someone really wanted my bag searched thoroughly. I posted it with hashtags. #travel-tips, #security story, #family drama. Within minutes, comments started appearing. What happened? Tell us more. Is there a story here? Perfect. I posted a follow-up. Let's just say some people think elderly travelers are easy targets. They're wrong. Full story when I land. My phone rang. Marcus. Robert, what are you posting on social media? Just travel updates. You don't usually use TikTok. Amy taught me. Why? I saw your posts. You're making it sound like someone targeted you specifically. Someone did target me specifically, Marcus. That's a serious accusation. Yes, it is. Silence on the line. Robert, I think grief is affecting your judgment. Maybe when you get back, we should discuss getting you some professional help. Professional help for what? For these paranoid thoughts, this conspiracy thinking. It's not healthy. I could hear gate announcements in the background of his call. He was still at the airport. Marcus, where are you right now? Driving home with Amy. But I could distinctly hear final boarding call for Delta Flight 289 to Dallas over his phone. Marcus, you're still at the airport. No, You're lying. Why are you still at the airport after my flight boards? Panic in his voice. I wanted to make sure you got off okay. Or you wanted to make sure I got arrested. The line went dead. I looked around the departure area. 50 passengers, multiple families, business travelers, all with phones and cameras. If Marcus was still here, still watching, still expecting something to happen, I called Amy directly. Dad, how was security? Amy, where's Marcus right now? He's driving. Why? I just talked to him. He's still at the airport. That's impossible. He's right here in the car. Amy, I can hear gate announcements on his phone. He's lying to both of us. Silence. Then, Marcus, Dad says you're still at the airport? I heard muffled conversation, then Amy came back on the line. Dad, Marcus says he stopped for gas near the airport. That's probably what you're hearing. Amy, listen carefully. Ask Marcus why he knew federal drug trafficking penalties earlier this morning. What? Ask him, right now. More muffled conversation. Then Amy's voice, concerned. Dad, what's going on? Marcus seems really upset. Because I found the drugs he planted in my luggage. The words hung in the air like a bomb. Dad, what did you just say? Amy's voice was small, confused. Marcus planted cocaine in my luggage last night. I have a recording of him discussing it. That's impossible. In the background, I heard Marcus shouting, Your father's having a breakdown. Don't listen to his conspiracy theories. Then Amy's phone went dead. 2 minutes later, Detective Sarah Chen appeared at Gate B23, badge visible, walking directly toward me with TSA Supervisor Martinez. Mr. Brennan? Detective Chen, thank you for coming. When a Boeing retiree with DHS clearance reports drug trafficking involving airport security, we respond quickly. She looked around at the gate area. Though I notice you're not under arrest. That's because the drugs aren't in my luggage anymore. Martinez raised an eyebrow. Where are they? That's complicated. Let me play you a recording first. I pulled up the audio file, playing it loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. Marcus's voice came through clearly. With you out of the picture, Amy inherits immediately. That would be tragic. But Amy would have financial security. The entire gate area went silent. 50 passengers stopped their conversations, pulled out phones, started recording. Sir, Chen said loudly, that sounds like conspiracy to commit inheritance fraud. It gets worse. I played the section about Marcus researching federal penalties and asset forfeiture laws. A passenger called out, Holy shit, his own son-in-law tried to frame him. Others joined in. What kind of monster does that? Someone needs to arrest that guy. Chen looked at Martinez. Where's the suspect now? That's the interesting part, I said. He told my daughter he was driving home, but I could hear gate announcements on his call 20 minutes ago. He's still in this airport. Martinez spoke into his radio. All units, be advised, we're looking for Marcus Patterson, white male, 32, blue polo shirt, black pants, possible drug trafficking suspect. The businessman with the expensive camera approached us. Officer, I've been live streaming travel content. Got some interesting footage of a guy in a blue polo shirt acting really suspicious near security. Show me. The businessman pulled up his live stream. There was Marcus, clearly visible, filming the security checkpoint with his phone while I went through screening. He was definitely recording your security process, the businessman said. Kept checking his watch, looking nervous. When you didn't get arrested, he started pacing and making phone calls. Chen nodded. Where is he now? Last I saw, he was near the Delta customer service desk, arguing with someone on the phone. Martinez radioed the location to airport security. A young woman spoke up. I recorded him too. He was being super weird, like trying to get people to film the security checkpoint. Kept saying stuff like, watch this old guy get what's coming to him. The gate area buzzed with excitement. Everyone was checking their phones, comparing videos, sharing the story in real time. Ma'am, Chen addressed the woman, can you send me that footage? Already posted it on TikTok. #airport drama is trending. Martinez's radio crackled. Suspect located. Delta customer service. Appears to be in heated argument with female passenger. Chen looked at me grimly. That's probably your daughter. We could see them from gate B23. Marcus and Amy near the customer service desk, Amy holding her phone to her ear. Marcus gesturing wildly. He's trying to convince her I'm having a mental breakdown, I said. Let's go straighten that out. Chen, Martinez, and I walked toward the customer service area, followed by a crowd of passengers with phones recording everything. As we approached, Marcus's voice carried clearly. Amy, your father is obviously confused. He planted drugs in his own luggage and forgot. Classic dementia behavior. Amy looked up and saw our approaching group. Dad? I'm here, sweetheart. Marcus turned and saw Detective Chen's badge. His face went white. Marcus Patterson? Chen displayed her credentials. Phoenix PD, I need to ask you some questions. This is harassment, based on a confused old man's fantasies. Chen looked at Amy. Ma'am, are you his wife? Yes, but then you need to hear this. Chen played the recording on speaker, loud enough for the growing crowd to hear. Marcus's voice filled the customer service area. The people I owe money to, they don't accept payment plans. I decided to solve a problem strategically. With you out of the picture, Amy inherits immediately. Amy's face went through shock, confusion, and horror in about 5 seconds. Marcus, what is this? It's taken out of context. What context makes with you out of the picture, Amy inherits immediately sound innocent? Chen interrupted. The crowd pressed closer. Phones everywhere, recording Marcus's public humiliation. Chen continued. Mr. Patterson, we also have evidence you researched federal drug penalties, asset forfeiture laws, and inheritance timing. Care to explain? Those searches were academic curiosity. A passenger in the crowd called out, "Bullshit! You tried to frame your own father-in-law." Amy stared at Marcus like she'd never seen him before. "You tried to send my father to prison?" "Amy, please, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Her voice was cold, final. "You tried to murder my father for money." Martinez stepped forward with handcuffs. "Marcus Patterson, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit drug trafficking, attempted fraud, and filing false reports." The handcuffs clicked into place while 75 passengers watched and recorded. Marcus's humiliation was complete and thoroughly documented. "This is insane," he shouted. "Where are the actual drugs? You can't arrest me without evidence." I smiled. "Marcus, you might want to check your jacket pocket." His face went completely white. "Agent Williams," Martinez called to TSA, "we need to search this man's clothing." The cocaine package was exactly where I'd placed it during our 4 a.m. confrontation. "Sir," Agent Williams announced loudly, "we have approximately 3 grams of suspected cocaine in your jacket pocket." The crowd erupted. Phones flashed. Marcus's legs buckled. Amy walked away without looking back. Within 10 minutes, Marcus was in federal custody. The airport was buzzing with viral videos, and I was somehow the hero of social media. Amy sat beside me in the gate area, staring at her hands. "How long have you known?" "I suspected for months. I knew for certain at 3:47 this morning." "Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me yesterday?" She considered this. "Probably not. Marcus spent months convincing you I was developing dementia. He's very convincing." "He is." Her voice was hollow. "Was any of it real? Our marriage?" "The early parts probably were, before the gambling debts got serious. My phone buzzed constantly. Notifications from TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. The airport videos were exploding across social media. One TikTok had already hit 500K views. "Grandfather destroys son-in-law who tried to frame him for drug trafficking." Amy looked at my phone. "Dad, you're famous." "Accidentally." Detective Chen approached with paperwork. "Mr. Brennan, we found more evidence in Marcus's phone. Text messages going back months. Detailed planning. He researched everything. Your flight schedule, TSA procedures, even federal prison mortality rates." Amy looked sick. "Mortality rates?" "He wanted to know how long elderly inmates typically survive." "I'm sorry, ma'am. Your husband was hoping your father would die in prison." Amy started crying. Not the gentle tears of grief, but the harsh sobs of betrayal. "Ma'am," Chen continued gently, "we also found evidence of embezzlement from his employer. Multiple federal agencies will be filing charges." "How much trouble is he in?" 15 to 20 years minimum. The drug trafficking charge alone carries a mandatory 10-year sentence. Add conspiracy, fraud, embezzlement, he won't see freedom until he's 50. A gate agent announced final boarding for my flight. "Dad, don't go. Please, I need you here. Sweetheart, Aunt Clara is expecting me, and you need time to process this without me hovering." "But what if I can't handle everything? The legal stuff, the divorce, the media attention." I handed her Detective Chen's business card. "You won't be handling it alone." "And Amy? You're stronger than Marcus ever gave you credit for." Chen nodded. "Ma'am, I'll personally ensure you have all the support you need. We've dealt with financial abuse cases before. You're not the first victim of this kind of manipulation." Amy wiped her eyes. "Victim? I never thought of myself as a victim. Marcus isolated you from your father's advice, convinced you to doubt your own judgment, and positioned himself as your protector while planning to destroy your family. That's textbook emotional abuse." The final boarding call echoed through the terminal. I stood up and hugged Amy tightly. "I love you, sweetheart. This isn't your fault. I married him, Dad. I brought him into our family." "You loved someone who turned out to be different than who he pretended to be. That's not a character flaw. It's human nature." As I walked toward the boarding gate, passengers actually applauded. The businessman with the camera shook my hand. "Sir, that was the most impressive takedown I've ever witnessed. Strategic, legal, and absolutely devastating." The flight attendant greeted me at the aircraft door. "Mr. Brennan, we've upgraded you to first class. Captain's orders." "That's not necessary." "Actually, sir, it is. What you did today took real courage. And intelligence." I settled into seat 2A as other passengers boarded, many still discussing the security incident. A teenage girl across the aisle was editing TikTok videos of Marcus's arrest. "Sir, this is going to get millions of views. #GrandpaJustice is already trending." As the plane pushed back from the gate, I watched Phoenix disappear below us. Marcus was in federal holding, facing charges that would destroy his life. Amy was free from his manipulation and protected by law enforcement. But most importantly, Helen's legacy was safe. The estate she and I built through 4 decades of hard work would remain intact for Amy and future grandchildren. My phone vibrated with a text from Amy. "Dad, Detective Chen showed me Marcus's search history. He researched how to fake dementia symptoms in elderly people. Everything he said about you was manipulation." Another text. "I'm so sorry I doubted you. I love you." I typed back, "I love you too. Focus on healing. Justice is already handled." The flight attendant offered me champagne. "Celebrating something special?" "Justice," I replied. "And family." She smiled. "The best kind of celebration." As we reached cruising altitude, I closed my eyes and thought about Helen. She would have been proud of how I protected Amy and our family's future. Sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous. By the time I landed in Amsterdam, the story had exploded globally. Aunt Clara met me at Schiphol Airport with her iPad, scrolling through international news coverage. "Robert, you're on BBC, CNN, even Dutch television. Look at this headline. American grandfather's airport sting operation destroys criminal son-in-law." The airport security footage had been released to media outlets, showing Marcus's arrest in full detail. Professional news crews had enhanced the audio, making his confession crystal clear for millions of viewers. My phone had died from constant notifications. When I plugged it in at Clara's house, the backlog was overwhelming. Interview requests from 67 news outlets, podcast invitations, a book deal offer. Someone wanted to option my story for a Netflix series. Amy called that evening with updates that shocked me. "Dad, it's bigger than we thought. The FBI found evidence Marcus was part of an organized fraud ring. He wasn't just stealing from you. He was one of 12 people systematically targeting elderly family members across Arizona." 12 people? They call it inheritance acceleration. Plant drugs on elderly relatives, get them arrested, comfort the grieving families while accessing their estates. Marcus wasn't even the leader. The scope was staggering. This wasn't Marcus's desperate solo scheme. It was a calculated criminal enterprise. How many families were affected? At least 37, maybe more. The FBI is still investigating. What about his employer? The embezzlement? $600,000 stolen from client accounts. 43 families lost retirement savings. Some people lost everything they'd worked their whole lives for. The human cost was heartbreaking. Marcus hadn't just tried to destroy our family. He'd actually destroyed dozens of others. But there was positive news, too. Amy had started therapy and was processing the betrayal with professional help. "Dad, the therapist says I wasn't stupid or naive. Marcus used sophisticated manipulation techniques, gaslighting, isolation, strategic doubt planting. She says you recognizing the pattern probably saved other potential victims. How so?" "The arrest triggered the FBI investigation. Without that, the fraud ring might have operated for years longer." Over the next week, the consequences expanded exponentially. Marcus's arrest had created a domino effect, exposing crimes across multiple states. Detective Chen called with regular updates. "Robert, your recording broke open a massive case. We've arrested 8 more conspirators. Recovered over $2 million in stolen assets. Your courage to fight back literally saved dozens of families." The social media impact was equally significant. #Grandpa Justice had generated over 15 million views across platforms. But more importantly, it had inspired other elderly victims to come forward. "We've received 43 new reports of elder financial abuse since your story went viral," Chen told me. "People who thought they couldn't fight back are finally seeking justice." The courthouse steps became a regular news location. Every day brought new interviews with families who'd been victimized by similar schemes. One woman, 72-year-old Margaret Thompson, spoke directly to news cameras. "Seeing Mr. Brennan fight back gave me courage to report my grandson. He'd been forging my signature for months, stealing my Social Security checks. I thought nobody would believe me." Marcus's legal situation deteriorated daily. Federal prosecutors added new charges as evidence mounted: wire fraud, elder abuse, racketeering, conspiracy to distribute controlled substances. "The prosecution is seeking 25 years minimum," Chen informed me. "With his cooperation level, he might get 15. Either way, he's finished." His professional destruction was equally complete. His securities license was permanently revoked. His college fraternity publicly expelled him. Even his own mother posted on Facebook, I raised a son I no longer recognize. The person who did these things is not the Marcus I thought I knew. The viral videos had created permanent documentation of his crimes. Future employers, landlords, dating prospects. Everyone would find those airport security videos within seconds of searching his name. Amy was rebuilding her life systematically. She'd moved into a small apartment, started financial planning courses, and begun volunteering with elder abuse prevention programs. Dad, I want to help other families recognize the warning signs. The way Marcus isolated me from your advice convinced me to doubt your mental capacity. Those are textbook manipulation tactics. You'd be good at that work. I hope so. I need something positive to come from this nightmare. The estate restructuring was proceeding smoothly. Our attorney had created multiple layers of protection against future fraud attempts. Irrevocable trusts, fiduciary oversight, mandatory cooling-off periods for major financial decisions. Most importantly, Amy was learning to manage money herself rather than depending on others. I understand now why you preferred boring investments, she told me during one of our video calls. Slow, steady growth protects against schemes like Marcus's. The media attention brought unexpected opportunities. A major publisher offered a 7-figure advance for my memoir. Netflix sent representatives to negotiate adaptation rights. Speaking bureaus wanted me for elder abuse prevention conferences. But the most meaningful impact was personal. Hundreds of elderly people had reached out to share their own stories of family financial abuse. One letter particularly moved me. Mr. Brennan, I'm 84 and my nephew has been stealing my pension checks for 2 years. I was too ashamed to tell anyone. Your story gave me strength to call the police. He was arrested yesterday. Thank you for showing us that age doesn't mean powerless. Marcus's sentencing was scheduled for 6 months out, but plea negotiations suggested 15 years minimum. His cooperation with federal investigators had uncovered fraud networks in 12 states. He's providing information on money laundering operations, drug distribution networks, even identity theft rings, Chen explained. Your recording started an investigation that's dismantling criminal enterprises we didn't even know existed. The final irony was financial. Marcus had risked everything to steal my $2.3 million estate. But the book and movie deals, speaking fees, and consulting opportunities created more wealth than he'd ever tried to steal. Dad? Amy laughed during our last call before I returned to Phoenix. You're going to be worth more than ever because Marcus tried to destroy you. Your mother would find that amusing. She'd be proud of how you protected our family, and proud of how many other families you ended up helping. On my final day in Amsterdam, I visited Helen's favorite flower market and bought tulips for her grave back home. Clara walked with me through the streets where Helen had played as a child. She always said you were the steady one, Clara reflected, the one who solved problems quietly without drama. I just applied aerospace principles to a family crisis, and probably prevented dozens of other family crises in the process. 3 weeks later, I was back in Phoenix preparing to testify at Marcus's sentencing hearing. Amy would be there too, reading a victim impact statement. Justice served quietly and systematically, exactly how Helen would have wanted it. 6 months after that morning at 3:47 a.m., I was sitting in federal court watching Marcus receive his sentence. 18 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years supervised probation, plus full restitution to 47 victims. Amy read her victim impact statement with steel in her voice I'd never heard before. Your Honor, the defendant didn't just try to frame my father for drug trafficking. He systematically destroyed my ability to trust my own judgment, isolated me from my family's wisdom, and planned to profit from my father's death in prison. The person I married no longer exists, if he ever existed at all. Marcus looked older, thinner, defeated. When given the chance to speak, he offered hollow apologies that convinced no one. After sentencing, Amy and I walked down the courthouse steps together. Reporters shouted questions, but we kept walking. How do you feel? She asked. Like justice was served? How about you? Free. For the first time in years. Completely free. That evening, we had dinner at Helen's favorite restaurant. Amy brought her latest investment portfolio for review. Our weekly tradition had continued even during the trial. Okay, so I've been reading about ESG investing. Environmental social governance factors, what do you think? We spent an hour discussing sustainable investing strategies, risk assessment, and long-term wealth building. The same conversations I'd tried to have with Marcus. Except Amy listened, asked intelligent questions, took notes. Dad, can I tell you something? Always. I'm grateful this happened. Grateful? Marcus was slowly destroying my judgment, my relationship with you, my financial future. If he hadn't gotten greedy with the drug scheme, I might have spent years letting him manipulate our family's wealth into nothing. She was right. Marcus's overreach had saved her from years of financial abuse. Plus, she smiled, your book advance is paying for my MBA program. The memoir had become a bestseller. Quiet Power: How One Grandfather Destroyed a Criminal Network. Half the proceeds went to elder abuse prevention programs. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Chen. Robert, another family came forward today, saw your interview on 60 Minutes. That makes 68 families who've reported elder abuse since your story broke. The ripple effects continued expanding. Congressional hearings on elder financial abuse, new federal legislation, training programs for bank employees to recognize manipulation tactics. Most significantly, 3 major airlines had implemented family fraud prevention protocols based on my experience. If passengers report suspected criminal activity by travel companions, trained security personnel investigate immediately. Sir, a young woman approached our table hesitantly, are you Robert Brennan? I am. I just wanted to thank you. My grandmother was being scammed by her caregiver. Your story gave our family courage to investigate. We probably saved her life savings. These interactions happened weekly now. Grocery stores, restaurants, airports, people sharing stories of family members they'd protected because my experience had raised their awareness. Amy started volunteering with the Phoenix Elder Abuse Prevention Coalition, teaching families to recognize financial manipulation. Her personal experience with Marcus's tactics made her an effective educator. It's like therapy, she told me. Helping other people helps me process what happened. Last week, she brought home news that made me proud. Dad, I've been accepted to the FBI's Financial Crimes Training Program. They want people with personal experience in family fraud cases. Helen would be proud. I hope so. I want to spend my career protecting families like ours. As we left the restaurant, Amy linked her arm through mine. Want to know the best part about tonight? What's that? For the first time in years, I made financial decisions based on my own research and your guidance. No manipulation, no pressure, no hidden agendas. Just family taking care of family. The boundaries were clear now. Trust earned through consistency, not demanded through manipulation. Wisdom shared freely, not withheld for control. Love expressed through protection, not exploitation. Sometimes quiet old men change the world by refusing to be victims. Have you ever had to protect someone from their own poor choices? Or maybe you've recognized manipulation tactics in your own family. Share your story in the comments. You never know who might need to hear it.